So friends, today we are going to tell you a story in which you will see how a student spends his days romancing his own teacher. Besides that, he spends his mornings and evenings watering his teacher's flower pot from his own tap. And if you want to know how just a few drops of water can calm a raging fire, then stay tuned for today's story. The name of this film is All Things Fair, which was released in 1995. The story begins by showing the atmosphere of 1943. At this time, all of Europe was engaged in war. Meanwhile, in Sweden, we are introduced to a 15-year-old boy. We come to know that this boy's name is Stig. On the other hand, we see a girl whose name is Lisbeth. Lisbeth actually lives in the apartment across from Stig. She really likes him a lot and even loves him deeply. However, she is never able to express how much she loves him. Then, in school, we are shown a teacher named Viola who is teaching all her students. In the classroom, all the children keep talking about her because Viola is extremely beautiful. At this moment, we see all the children were chewing the same piece of gum over and over again. At that moment, we see that Stig is also present there, and he uses his gum to hit a fly sitting on the board. After the class ends, Viola stops Stig. As a punishment, she makes him clean the entire board. Later, we see Stig returning home, where we find out that his brother has returned from the war. Seeing his brother back, Stig becomes very happy. As Stig steps out of his house, he encounters Lisbeth. She had come to talk to him, but she doesn't have the courage to actually speak to him. After waiting for a moment, Stig walks away. In the next scene, we see Stig with Viola. He is reading one of Viola's dictionaries. Just then, Viola enters the room. As Stig goes to put the dictionary back, his eyes fall on Viola's thighs. Seeing this, his papu, a playful reference to his emotions or physical reaction, stands up. Viola also notices this and realizes that something is happening to him. After this, sometime later, we see that Stig becomes completely obsessed with Viola's love. He spends all his time wandering outside Viola's house, day and night. One day, when Viola finishes her class and is about to leave, she asks the students if anyone can accompany her to help with her work, as she is going shopping and needs some assistance. As soon as Stig hears this, he immediately raises his hand. After that, neither of them can control themselves, and they both quickly reach a room where Stig kisses Viola. Despite this, Viola does not say anything to him. Later, when all the school children go to watch a plane, Stig makes an excuse, saying he has a headache. Instead of joining them, he goes straight to Viola's house. Upon entering her house, he kisses her again. After this, the two of them spend the entire day warming the bed together. One day, we see that Stig is at Viola's house when suddenly her husband arrives. However, when he sees Stig, he assumes he is just one of Viola's students and lets him go. Her husband ignores the situation and doesn't react. After that, we see that Stig regularly visits Viola's house, finishes his work, and then leaves. Many times he even runs into her husband, but nothing happens. Sometimes Stig even stays over at Viola's house at night. One night, after spending the entire time with her, he is unable to leave in the morning before her husband arrives. Her husband finds him in the kitchen. We then discover that her husband already knew about their affair. Instead of confronting Stig, he casually drinks with him, and they become good friends. Meanwhile, outside Stig's house, a dinner party is taking place. After the party, Lisbeth takes Stig to her house, locks the room, and asks him to close his eyes. When he does, she takes off all her clothes in front of him. However, we realize that Stig's heart and mind are only intoxicated by his teacher, Viola. The next morning, we see Stig sitting with Viola's husband, drinking again. This time, however, her husband drinks too much and passes out on the spot. Viola then calls Stig inside, but instead of going to her room, he decides to return home. He starts feeling that by being with Viola, he is betraying her husband. Later, in class, when Viola checks Stig's notebook, she writes a note telling him that she wants to meet him that evening. After reading this, Stig makes an excuse to go to the washroom and sneaks away. He hides inside a box, and many girls come into the room. Among them, Lisbeth also arrives. After everyone else leaves, Stig sends a letter from the box. Upon reading it, Lisbeth comes back, and the two meet. They share an intimate moment there. Afterward, Stig receives a letter informing him that his brother has died in the war. Upon hearing this devastating news, Stig and his mother break down in grief. One day, Viola goes to the cinema hall to meet Stig. Meanwhile, Lisbeth also arrives there, hoping to find him, but she does not see him anywhere and eventually leaves. After that, she returns to the cinema hall and witnesses Stig and Viola being intimate. Seeing this, Lisbeth sees them together, starts crying, and leaves the place heartbroken. In the next scene, Stig goes to Viola's house to meet her. However, Viola is drunk and asks him to be intimate with her. The next morning, Viola tells Stig that he has failed. Stig immediately understands that Viola failed him on purpose because he had been ignoring her. The following day, when Stig enters the classroom, Viola calls him to her desk and spreads her legs in front of him. In response, Stig forcefully pushes the table, causing a commotion so that everyone in the class can see what she is doing. After this incident, Stig is summoned to the principal's office, where the principal also informs him about his failure. In the final scene, Viola is handing out the students' results. At that moment, Stig enters the classroom, pulls down his pants in front of everyone, exposing himself to Viola, and then walks away. After that, he goes to the library, collects all his books, and leaves the place. And with this, the story comes to an end.